calls, no messages. Nothing but junk mail and overdue bills to keep me company. Seems nobody wants to hire a real private dick anymore, a professional like me. A guy who does the detective work nobody else wants to do. A guy who wears hats and walks around in a black and white world. I began contemplating a more profitable line of work, like politics.
We are the show you want to know. It's time to talk to you.
All right, folks, good afternoon. Welcome to the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on Radio Central, AM 830 WCRN, from the center of the dial, the center of New England, and the center of information, AM 830 WCRN. You can join the conversation for the next hour at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Text line up and running here in the studio, 617-297-8388. Text like you do anybody else. It appears on the screen here in real time. We try to incorporate you into the conversation. 617-297-8388. Of course, the station is streaming 24/7, like thousands of other radio stations do, on the TuneIn app. You know what that means? That means you can take us anywhere. I love this feature. I have the TuneIn app on my smartphone, my tablet, my laptop. It follows me everywhere. Plus, you can tell Alexa, if you so are inclined to have her hanging around the house or office, to play WCRN, and she'll do that with no questions asked. And the Joe Mangiacotti Show does stream, whether at the WCRN Palatial Studios or in the Cameo Studios. The Cameo camera is on, and you can watch and listen to the show, whether that's on Facebook or X, LinkedIn profile for me, or you can go to Rumble, where we have the Joe Mangiacotti Show channel. You can go to the station's Facebook page or YouTube channel as well. There are so many ways to listen and watch, not to mention the fact that the show is also turned into a podcast, not just on the replay link on WCRNradio.com, but as a podcast, wherever you subscribe to your podcast. So you can do Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play, TuneIn, wherever it is that you subscribe to your podcast, you can find that out. So follow me at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show, as well as JoeMangiShow.com for our blog website as well. I don't really mention that one a lot. Today, again, flying the board back at HQ. He'll get you set up and into the studio for two-way talk and conversation at 508-871-7000. But today, folks, is a very solemn farewell to Officer Didarul Islam and, of course, the political firestorm around Zohan Mamdani. So New York City is gathering today in a somber unity to mourn the loss of NYPD police officer Islam, 36-year-old hero, gunned down in the line of duty during a mass shooting at 345 Park Ave on Monday. And the funeral at the Parkchester James Masad Mosque in the Bronx is not just a farewell to a devoted officer, but a moment of collective grief for a city reeling from its deadliest shooting in 25 years. Officer Islam, a Bangladeshi immigrant, husband, father of two with a third child about a month away, leaves behind a legacy of service and sacrifice. As police officers across the city mourn, the day is also marked by a heated political controversy surrounding Democratic mayoral candidate Zohan Mamdani, whose past calls to defund the police have resurfaced, of course, casting a shadow over his presence at this funeral. So this essay reflects on the solemnity of Islam's farewell and examines Mamdani's apparent contradictions on police funding, highlighting the tension between public safety and political rhetoric on this mournful day. And Officer Didarul Islam's funeral is a poignant reminder of the risks law enforcement officers face daily. On Monday, Islam was working as a uniformed security guard for a private company when Shane Tumara, a 27-year-old gunman, opened fire in a Manhattan office building, killing Islam, three others, including another security officer, before taking his own life. Now, the attack, possibly motivated by Tumara's belief that he suffered from CTE, and he blamed the NFL, which of course he never worked at, has left the city shaken. Islam's body was transferred to the James Masad Mosque on Tuesday, in what they call a dignified procession, with scores of officers led by 20 motorcycles saluting as the NYPD flag draped the coffin as it arrived. Community members, Mayor Eric Adams, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, joined in honoring Islam, a devout Muslim who mentored young Bangladeshis and others. He served as the 47th precinct. If you know New York or New York police, you know where the 47th precinct is. His friends, Faisal Hamid, described him as a very good officer who served honestly. Well, Mujano Karim recalled Islam's journey from a security guard to a patrolman who handled assaults and domestic violence cases. Driven by a desire to leave a proud legacy for his family, the black and blue banting at the precinct and the steady stream of mourners bearing food to Islam's home underscores the depth of loss felt by both the NYPD and the Bangladeshi community. Now, amid this grief, Sohran Mamdani, the Democratic mayoral nominee, he faces intense scrutiny for attending Islam's funeral. Mamdani, who won a stunning primary victory just a few weeks ago on June 24th, returned from his wedding in Uganda to meet Islam's family on Wednesday. Now remember that wedding in Uganda was on a family private compound with very heavy armed security and security measures and anti-surveillance measures in place, like cell phone jamming equipment. So he very much sees the value of armed protection and security for himself anyway. But describing their hospitality as emblematic of New York spirit, his presence, however, has sparked backlash due to his social media posts all the way back to 2020, advocating for defunding and dismantling the NYPD, including a claim that the department is racist, anti-queer, and a major threat to public safety. Unquote on that. That's taken from his post, calling the New York Police Department in general across the board racist and anti-queer, and that they themselves are a public threat to public safety. These statements, made in the wake of George Floyd's death, have been weaponized by rivals like Adams and Andrew Cuomo. They're running as independents in the November election. They're going to split that vote, guys. Cuomo called Mamdani's past stance a reality check for extreme left theories, while Adams emphasized Islam's sacrifice as evidence of the need for more police resources. And remember, Eric Adams was a police officer before becoming mayor. I think it was the New York Transit. Don't hold me to that one. Critics, including Elise Stefanik, she's a Republican from New York, have labeled Mamdani unfit for mayor, accusing him of shifting positions for political gains. And we know that politicians do that as an inherent characteristic of being a politician. But this isn't shifting. This is backpedaling and absolute BS when it comes to trying to convince you I was for it before I was against it. I was against it before I was for it. That one of those Kerry type things. Mamdani's response marks a clear pivot from his earlier rhetoric. And on yesterday, he firmly stated, I'm not defunding the police. I'm not running to defund the police, proposing instead a Department of Community Safety to handle mental health cases and crises, and redirecting NYPD focus to serious crime while cutting overtime budgets. He describes himself as a candidate who learns and leads, distancing himself from his 2020 comments and expressions of shared frustration post-Floyd. Mamdani's visit to Islam's family, where he was welcomed and shared breakfast, underscores his ties to the city's South Asian communities, particularly Bangladesh, who celebrated his primary win. Yet his critics, including social media users, call him a fraud for backtracking, pointing to posts in his 2020 remarks. when he witnessed a couple of NYPD police officers crying in their patrol car, minding their own business, having a moment. He posted a picture of this saying nature is healing in response to that cop crying as evidence of hypocrisy. Mamdani fired back at Cuomo, accusing him of politicizing the tragedy and focusing on old world tweets rather than victims. Now, the contradiction in Mamdani's stance reflects a broader tension in New York's political landscape. Police funerals have long been flashpoints for dissent, as seen in 2014 when officers turned their backs on Mayor Bill de Blasio. Remember that? Over his reform promises? Or in 2022 when an officer's widow criticized DA Alvin Bragg for being soft on crime. Mamdani's proposal for a community safety department aligns with progressive calls for reallocated police duties, but it really does risk alienating officers. And voters prioritizing public safety, especially after a shooting that killed 4, his critics argue that the 2020 rhetoric undermines his credibility, while supporters see his shift as pragmatic evolution in a city where crime remains top concern. Polls show Mamdani leading. All polls show that, actually. But Adams and Cuomo's attacks highlight the electoral stakes, with public safety defining an issue here, folks. And on this solemn day, the focus should remain on Officer Islam's sacrifice. His death, leaving a pregnant wife and 2 boys, resonate deeply with the Bronx, Bangladesh community and beyond. Fundraisers for his family have raised over $250,000, reflecting widespread support. Governor Kathy Hochul called him one of New York's finest, and Adams praised his life-saving bravery. The NYPD, hurting from this loss, stands united in grief, with officers from across the Bronx filling shifts at the 47th Precinct in solidarity. Yet the police firestorm around Mamdani risks overshadowing this moment. His attempt to honor Islam while navigating his past statements illustrates the challenge of balancing reform with respect for law enforcement in a city on edge. In closing today's funeral, it's time to honor Didarul Islam's legacy, a man who rose from immigrant roots to serve and protect, embodying the best of New York. The controversy surrounding Mamdani's shifting stance on police funding, while significant, should not detract from this solid moment. But we have to take our first break here on the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Stick with us. Back in 2 and 10.
Are you looking for a holistic approach to your health? One that supports your body's natural ability to regulate, adapt, regenerate, and heal. Look no further. The Bioregulatory Medical Institute, BRMI, a nonprofit global organization dedicated to advancing the science and art of bioregulatory medicine, welcomes you to their free and rich library of resources. You'll find articles, podcasts, videos, and more at brmi.online. BRMI believes health freedom is a basic human right, honoring medical ethics and the innate intelligence of the human body. When your body is properly supported, it will thrive. If you're looking for the root cause of illness, physical, emotional, or spiritual, visit brmi.online. brmi.online.
Polar Park is the place to play, so treat yourself to a private suite at the best ballpark in AAA. Suite rentals are the best way to enjoy a fully catered and climate-controlled experience at the park. Whether you choose to watch the game from inside of the suite or out in your seats, it's the ultimate experience for a special occasion. Visit WooSox.com or call 508-500-8888 to reserve your suite today.
Did you know your business loses $1,685 per employee each year? Poor health doesn't just mean sick days. It drains energy, lowers productivity, and impacts your bottom line. I'm Kelly Hamilton, certified holistic nutritionist, ICU nurse, and owner of A Better Path to Wellness. I help businesses create healthier workplaces so employees thrive and companies save money. Let's optimize the wellness and productivity of your team. Call 774-253-4934 today.
All right, folks. Welcome back here to the second segment of the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AMA 30 WCRN. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. You can join the conversation for the remainder of this hour at 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Text line up and running. If you text 617-297-8388, it appears on the screen here in the studio in real time. We try to incorporate it into the conversation, and today we'll get you set up if you call 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Don't forget, I do stream the show, whether from the palatial WCRN studios or right here in the Cameo studios. You can go to Facebook, Twitter, or X, I think we should call it now, LinkedIn profile, and over on Rumble in real time. So the funeral going on in New York, your thoughts on that, any input you'd like to put there, you're welcome to join it. But I'd like to shift the conversation a little more local here to Massachusetts in this shelter crisis discussion that we're having. Again, there are organizations like Mass Fiscal Alliance, where we've been joined by Craney and others there. They're great taxpayer watchdog organization. And some of the information that has just recently come out on this is just, we got to talk about it because it affects all of us as taxpayers. But let me take a pause real quick and just go to the phones because Mark's waiting patiently. Hey, Mark, good afternoon. And what say you?
Yeah, I love that 15% tax for the Chinese. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're going to take out of every $100 you bring into here, our country, you're going to take $15 out of your pocket and stick it in our pocket so you can sell it at Walmart or wherever you're going to sell it. I think that's a real good deal.
Across the board, Mark, aren't all these tariffs turning out to be actually a pretty good deal, considering that there was one point in the history of our country where we had no income tax?
Good. They ain't pretty good. They're real good. We're going to get rich off of this deal. I'm telling you.
Last month, we had the first time we had an actual budget surplus in, 40 years?
Yeah, you think it had anything to do with, instead of them picking our pockets, we're picking their pockets, like they've been doing to us for the last 45 years. The last thing I want to bring up is this. Have you heard anything I don't know. If I can't confirm it. I don't have the internet connection right now. But anyways, I heard that, dig this, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is purchasing Massachusetts agricultural land. And what they're doing after the plan to do after the purchase of this agricultural land is put farms on it. But they ain't going to be growing corn. They're going to be growing windmills. You'd want to talk about a George Orwellian nightmare when you used to go out in a beautiful New England countryside that was world renowned, by the way. Mm-hmm. And all you see are these atrocious windmills where you used to see cows and beautiful scenery. Gone. Isn't that wonderful?
Not at all. Look, Mark, I think that we need to have all kinds of combinations of energy producing things. However, windmills, folks, they don't justify their existence. Their 20-year lifespan is never going to counter or equal what it takes, the amount of energy, meaning oil, fossil fuels, the amount of steel, the 450-foot crane to lift the damn thing up, how much grease it takes to keep the thing lubricated. It doesn't even return its investment in its 20-year, and then they're horrible to get rid of. They do not make common sense. And there's a scene in that show, Landman, with Billy Bob Thornton. And when he is talking to that lawyer and he just lays that all out, it's probably the best argument for why they just don't make sense on a mass production. Not to mention the fact that they disrupt wind patterns, bird patterns, migration patterns, sea life, et cetera, et cetera. The wind blades
on one of those things?
What about them?
Yeah, one of them flew off.
Oh,
Down
yeah,
here,
they do
down
that.
here in the Mass Sea. Yeah, the bleeping thing flew off. And these things are huge.
Yeah.
They're like the size of a 40-foot crisscross.
The blade itself is about 40
they're
feet.
toxic. They're toxic waste.
No. There's so many other, and we just, there was an article about a week ago I came across that we just discovered a pocket of hydrogen trapped in the earth that could last 1,000 years. And I've been saying this for a while, folks. I think we're about to skip over electric vehicles and jump to hydrogen. Hydrogen can, it's easy to make from water. We separate the hydrogen from the oxygen, and we already have that in Sweden and parts of Switzerland, even where they have hydrogen stations and pumps along the road. It's gotta happen, Mark. And a final thought before I have to let you go. Oh, Mark's gone. All right, thank you, Mark. Always appreciate the call. Fantastic. Yeah, folks. I mean, your opinion on windmills. I mean, I don't know, some people think they're pretty cool to look at or what have you, but do the math, do the research, the cost of producing this thing, the amount of steel it takes to make it, what it takes to haul them out to these wind farms, then to erect them. I'll never forget years ago when I was living in one of the properties in Worcester. It was up near the and I can't remember the name of the Catholic school up there, but you could see from my balcony. And at the time, I was doing the morning show at a different station, so I would leave the house at 4:15 in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I came home that afternoon, maybe 3 o'clock, and I grabbed a drink and I went out on the balcony, and for a second I knew something was different and off. And then I realized I'm looking at a 201-foot windmill at that Catholic school. And I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, has that always been there? And did I just notice it now? And of course, a couple of seconds, just Google and research it, you find the whole story behind it, that they put this windmill up to sell energy back into the grid, and how much it cost. It was over $1 million. I think it was a couple $1 million. But I don't know. I remember my neighbor at the time really kind of shaking his head and complaining about it, because I do remember the sound. I mean, right there, if you had your windows open or if I was out on my balcony, the sound of the disturbing the wind, and it was just whoof, 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 constant when it was on, but they could lock it up. And it seemed like that was always locked more than it was spinning for some reason. All right, 508-871-7000 if you'd like to get into the conversation. So the numbers have come out. And remember, folks, all these millions and billions of dollars that you get thrown around, that we're talking about what it costs because we're not following what used to happen. And border ICE would, when someone entered illegal, they would, if there was a asylum claim, they would be detained, and you'd have 30 days, get them in front of an asylum attorney and go for it. We're at 90%, by the way. So the bar to meet for asylum in that initial claim is so low, it's basically automatic. But by the time you get to that hearing in front of an immigration judge, the bar has increased as to prove that you're going to be persecuted, prosecuted, killed, etc. That 90% of asylum claim requests are denied and results in an order to remove. So that means only about 10% do the asylum judges actually find that asylum status fits that immigrant. So maybe they need to raise the bar on the initial front end too. But where it's costing the taxpayers your money to house and feed for years, months anyway, but years. And that has to come from somewhere else. So here in Massachusetts, the new numbers are out, and it's gone up. And we're spending an average of $3,870 per week per family in the emergency shelter system here. That's to the very latest data coming out a matter of days ago. Now, this translates over to $15,000 a month per family. That's an extraordinary burden on taxpayers, folks. And the state spent over $940 million in emergency shelters during fiscal year 2025, and that goes from July 1st of 24 to just past June of 25. Let's call that $1 billion, with projections suggesting that the total could climb higher as final payments are settled. So now we're over $1 billion. Now, this level of expenditure is unsustainable, folks, especially as a state revenues are kind of slowing, creating budget challenges for other critical services like education and infrastructure and, of course, healthcare. So instead of addressing the root causes of shelter crisis, Governor Maura Healey and Beacon Hill lawmakers are redirecting funds to other programs without reducing overall spending. Again, robbing Peter to pay Paul, taking away your services, taking your tax dollars and using them in a way that most of us do not agree with. The fiscal year 2025 budget allocates only $276 million for shelters. Yet the actual spending has already exceeded that $940 million, indicating a reliance on supplemental budgets and reallocation from other areas. That means you suffer, your children suffer, the services that you count on through your tax infrastructure is suffering, folks. And this approach, it does risk depleting resources for other essential programs, such as the schools. What about municipal aid? Well, failing to provide a long-term solution to the shelter crisis. Taxpayers are bearing the cost of an inefficient system. $1.3 billion spent on emergency shelters since the start of fiscal year 24. It can't keep going, folks. Hey, we have to take our mid-show break here on the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Reminding you can join the conversation at 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000. Lines are open and available. Join the conversation and follow me on social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show, MANGI. Stick with us, folks. We'll be back in 2 and 10.
Time now for the forecast from the Boston Independence Group Weather Center. Call Jerry Doherty today at 877-772-1776. Retirement is within reach.
I'm meteorologist Sherry Spearn. Here's the latest Boston 25 weather on Radio 830 WCRN. Definitely hazy, hot, and humid today with highs well into the 90s. Overnight tonight, it's going to stay mild and muggy as we get some more clouds moving in. And tomorrow, expect cooler temperatures. In fact, it's all day 70s in most locations. But we've also got mostly cloudy skies and some developing rain, heaviest and steadiest late in the day. I'm meteorologist Sherry Spearn. You can hear Boston 25 live for the morning drive weekdays on AM 830 WCRN.
More live and local radio is next. Stay tuned to Radio Central 830 WCRN.
Hi, folks. This is Mike Stacey, head professional at Norton Country Club, welcoming you to the start of the 2025 golf season. Norton Country Club is a championship 18-hole golf course located just minutes off of 495. The course came through the winter grid, and we're open for daily fee, as well as having membership opportunities and outings available. Our clubhouse is a great venue for your wedding or group gathering needs. If you're interested, call 508-285-2400, extension 1 for events, or 103 for golf, as well as nortoncountryclub.com. Hope to see you out there.
WCRN Radio is thrilled to bring back a legendary voice, and now you can help tell the stories. Paul Harvey captivated millions with his unique style and unmistakable voice. By sponsoring the rest of the story, your brand can become a part of this rich tradition, and it links your business with a program that people love and trust. So don't miss this unique opportunity to grow your business while becoming part of something truly special. For sponsorship details, just go to WCRNradio.com.
All right, folks, welcome back here to the second half of the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Please join the conversation, 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000. That will get you into the studio for two-way talk and conversation. Don't forget, we are streaming, so you can join us in the virtual studio on Facebook, X, LinkedIn profile, and, of course, Rumble. So I'm talking about this taxpayer-funded emergency shelter situation. It jumped up, right, to almost $4,000. And taxpayers deserve, per family per week, by the way, $15,000 a week. So taxpayers deserve transparency and accountability. The state must prioritize effective cost-cutting solutions that don't drain public resources. Don't take the money from your school systems and your emergency services, your police departments, your fire departments, and it's shifting the funds away from these vital services. Now, Governor Healy implemented measures like a 6-month shelter stay limit and a 4,000 family cap starting in December of this year. They're not, or yet they haven't significantly reduced costs at all. Caseload, folks. Well, the number of families in shelters dropped from 7,600 to 3,451 in July. Spending remains high, suggesting inefficiencies in the system. Call me surprised. Inefficiencies in a Massachusetts state government system? Get out of here. The administration's focus on short-term fixes, like closing hotel shelters, doesn't address the underlying issue, like housing shortages or workforce training for families to achieve stability. And to have this conversation when the people that we're talking about are not here legally, and in another world prior to the Biden administration would have been in an ICE detention facility. So the administration's focus on short-term fixes like closing hotel shelters doesn't address this underlying issue at all. Now, advocates for a multifaceted approach, including increased investment in affordable housing, which to me presents other, we should have programs for affordable housing, but for the citizens who live here, work here, participate in the whole system legally here, whether by birth or by visa, green card, etc. And workforce training. Shouldn't we have workforce training as part of the entire education system? And stop with this idea that you only have to, you got to go to college, got to go get that 4-year degree. Guys like Mike Rowe, right, who has demonstrated that the need for those other vocations, electricians, pipe fitters, welders, construction, and support services to help families transition out of the shelters. If you do have the shelters, right, isn't that a very important part of the formula? But what do we see happen? We saw this happen with the welfare system. Multiple generations of families who live on welfare, food stamps, and in the program, social programs that were designed to be safety nets and temporary, to make sure that those among us who came upon hard times, whether situational or health reasons, were not forgotten, were not homeless, did not starve, did not have medical treatment. They were never meant to be a way of life, but a certain political party decided this is great because the more people who are dependent on these programs and live their lives, including generations where the children are taught, and as harsh as this might sound, but there are families, mostly single parent, usually the mother, who explain to their teenage daughters that, do you know if you have a child, you're going to get your own Section 8 voucher or housing, and you're going to get welfare, and you're going to get food stamps and WIC. Don't worry about your medical coverage. Mass Health got that. And if you want a 3-bedroom, you have another baby. Yeah, that's just the cold hard facts of that one. So we're going to urge Congress to pass bipartisan border security agreements so that we can alleviate the strain from the migrant influxes that are happening. And as federal inaction has left states like Massachusetts to handle the crisis alone, it's just, it doesn't work, folks. We've got to demand a detailed plan to reduce per family costs, like streamlining services or prioritizing local families. This whole program, that we put in a long time ago about the shelter program and stuff, shouldn't it be argued, and shouldn't someone say, well, this was put in for citizens of Massachusetts that ended up down and out, not for people who are legally here? I got to keep going back to the most simple legal principle, right? Is fruit of the rotten tree. And for those who have never heard that or understand that, I think everybody has at this point in their life. It's like if evidence is obtained illegally by the police because lack of search warrant or something, well, whatever's found after the police did not legally follow the law doesn't count in a court. And if you didn't legally follow the entrance into the United States, should the Massachusetts laws made for its citizens apply to you? You're not really a citizen of Massachusetts because you're not a citizen of the United States. Therefore, you can't be a citizen of the state. So we got to prioritize local families. Highlight how the shelter crisis impacts every Massachusetts resident through these taxes and reduced funding of local services. Look, Massachusetts cannot afford to keep redirecting funds to prop up this inefficient shelter system. Taxpayers deserve a government that tackles the root causes. That's housing shortages, lack of federal support, bureaucratic inefficiencies. Rather than shifting money from other critical programs, it's time for some bold, sustainable resolutions that prioritize both fiscal responsibility and compassion for the families that do need it. Absolutely. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871. Lines are open and available. Ted will get you into the studio and for two-way talking conversation, folks. So do that. 508-871-7000. Hey, if you hadn't heard, and it's kind of all over there. Oh, and by the way, before I get into this, and I just saw it before coming on here because I think it was yesterday, I talked about the Sydney ad, right, with the jeans. The left head is exploding on this thing because she used the word gene, the J and the G, gene, and she has good genes. Well, Dunkin' Donuts just released a commercial that was clearly developed, written, produced, shot before this controversy. But at first glance, you're like, oh my goodness, are they doubling down on this? But this new Dunkin' Donuts commercial shows, and I'm sorry, I guess when you get older, you just know to always up on who celebrities are supposed to be. A very attractive man who has great complexion, kind of brown type of look to him, is talking about he checks his DNA about his golden brown. In other words, a gene thing. When another commercial. So what is this going to do? Because that American gene company, their stock has skyrocketed after this went out. So it's really, really crazy. Ted, are you saying that we have a caller or we don't have a caller?
Caller Skip.
I'm sorry?
Skip is calling.
Oh, okay. Let's go to the phones. 508-871-7000. Hey, Skip. My apologies. I thought Ted was telling me that to skip the caller or that the caller skipped, but that's your name. What say you?
Yeah. I want to talk about the wind generators.
Sure.
I've been up and in them. I've never worked at them. I'm in the electrical field, but there's a few things that people don't understand. there's a minimum and a maximum wind speed. And you brought up a few minutes ago about the braking.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times people will see wind and they won't see the blades turning.
Right, because they've been locked. Yeah.
It's either not at a minimum or if it goes over max. And when you go down route by 146 and you look up on the hill and you see that wind generator up there, that's on, I believe, I forget the name of the street, but it's up near the school.
Sure, okay.
A lot of times I'll be going by there in the morning and I'll see I'll see wind, but the blades aren't turning. And
that's the windmill I was talking about, Skip. That's the windmill that I came home from work one day and looked at it and go, oh my God, has that been there this whole time? They put it up in a day while I was at work. And that was right outside my condo when I lived up in that area. So I know the one you're talking about. And it seemed like it was locked more often than it was actually spinning.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I see it almost daily. And so I know that for a fact. And another thing that's if you live in the area of these things, that light, they call it strobing.
Mm-hmm.
Where if your house is in the path of the sun and the blade, and every few seconds that light from the sun is going on off, on off, on off.
Sure.
And it's extremely annoying. And then another factor with those things, there again, if you lived in the area, you had mentioned about the whooshing sound.
Yeah.
And that noise is, you couple that with strobing, and you've had people in areas and towns that were really against these things. And I've witnessed it, and I'm telling you, it is aggravating. But another point that I'd like to just bring up about the Nantucket wind farm. There was maybe a year ago on TV, a very interesting article. They built special repair boats, and they man them with 24-hour-a-day crews that go from windmill to windmill to maintain them.
Yeah.
And it's really expensive. And it showed these boats and all the equipment. And one of the problems...
Skip, I got to actually hold you there because I'm on a hard break. I can't control the break coming up, but it's a good point. And yes, I'm not a big fan of them as well. But folks, we're going to take our third and final break here on the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Stick with us. Back in 2 and 10.
Looking for a fuel and food stop that truly stands out? Experience the Yatco difference. At Yatco, we're dedicated to bringing you the best customer service, the highest quality products, and a commitment to making your life on the go easier. Yatco has 15 convenient locations across central Massachusetts, and now our newest spot at 75 Quonsigamut Ave in Worcester. Yatco, where every stop keeps you going.
This is Jerry Doherty, host of Making Money Last, right here on WCRN. Like all business owners, I'm interested in why people choose to work with Boston Independence Group. So I asked my clients. The most common response, Jerry does not try to be all things to all people. Boston Independence Group is specialized, focused solely on retirement planning. My customers enjoy the difference. We do one thing, and we do it exceptionally well. Help other people live better in retirement. That's it. If you're ready to retire or making plans to retire, we can do for you what we've done for hundreds of other retirees throughout New England. Live better in retirement. Just give me a call. I'll show you how. My toll-free number is 877-772-1776. Again, that number is 877-772-1776. And you can visit us on the web at bostonindependencegroup.com. bostonindependencegroup.com.
Hi, I'm Lee Gaudette of the Gaudette Insurance Agency, a third-generation family business based in Whitensville with branch office locations in Grafton, Shrewsbury, Westboro, and Southborough. We are a full-service independent agency offering all aspects of insurance to businesses, families, and individuals. We are in the peace of mind business. Call, click, or come in to see us at any of our locations for a free assessment of your insurance needs. Also, listen to Radio Central WCRN every Friday morning at 9:30 for the Gaudette Insurance Show.
All right, folks, welcome back to the fourth and final segment. Skip, thank you for the call. Sorry we ran against the clock. But yeah, again, between the cost of producing them, the cost of installing them, the cost of maintaining them, the oil, the grease that it takes, the repair, the constant repair, and the fact that they just do not turn out more energy than it takes to do all of that, it's asinine to invest in that. Let's put a pin in that conversation, but it makes a good point. Yes, so go back and thank you. I inundated with texts and messages in the break to tell me what this commercial is. So this is Dunkin' has kind of their own shot at the genetics ad right after Sydney Sweeney's American Eagle thing. And American Eagle stock jumped, and it's been occupying talk shows and stuff for a couple days now. So the left is going to go nuts over this latest genetics ad, right? After Sweeney's ad there. So it turns out the guy I'm talking about, I don't know this guy, good looking Gavin. His name's Gavin. So he's from that Gavin Casliago. He's from the Summer I Turned Pretty show, which I've never seen in my life. So I don't know exactly who he is. Young, tanned, tall, white teeth, good-looking man. And he comes on in this 30-second clip where he says, look, I didn't ask to be the king of summer. It just kind of happened. And then he says, this tan, genetics. So we can imagine how the left's going to respond to this. Now, the thing about this is this had to be all done before the American Eagle spot. Right? It's not like Dunkin's going, oh, let's jump on this. So you had American Eagle over here, and you got the Dunkin' people over here, and I'd like to. I have no idea if they're the same marketing company, possibly, right? But they both come out within a couple of days each other of genetics type of ad. He goes on to say, can't help it. Every time I drink Golden Hour Refresher, it's like the sun just finds me. So if sipping these refreshers makes me the king of summer, guilty as charged. Now, I guess this is a drink at some kind of tropical fruit drink that Dunkin' has out. So left's going to go nuts on this, folks. I think it's hysterical. Like I said, I didn't even know who Sydney Sweeney was till this controversy. That's just what happens, I guess, when you get older. You don't know who you're supposed to think is a celebrity. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. And if you haven't noticed or seen it already, officially Kamala Harris's political future. One question has been answered. She has declared yesterday she will not run to succeed Governor Gavin Newsom in the 2026 gubernatorial election. She said that I love this state, its people, and its promise. It is my home, but after deep reflection, I've decided that I will not run for governor in this election. This decision follows months of speculation about her next move, after losing, of course, last year in the presidential election to Trump. And she emphasized her deep reflection in her decision. That suggests deliberate promise, or a deliberate process, rather, amid pressure to define her post-vice presidency role. Now, she also just came out with the book. So I think a lot of this has to do with creating a buzz and getting this out as the book was released yesterday.
Joe, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, what's up, Ted?
Who is this person you're talking about?
Giggles McGee. You know who she is.
I'm sorry. I guess I just don't follow the news.
Yeah, she has a book out. Look, she hinted at a need for new methods and fresh thinking. Kamala Harris is suggesting that we need fresh thinking.
Oh, is that who you're talking about?
Yeah. Didn't I say that at the time?
She's gone. I don't think people even recognize her name anymore.
No, look, she can rest on her laurels at this point, right? Because she still is liked among the Democratic circles. She should find herself on a couple boards, board of directors at $200,000, $300,000 a year, do some speaking gigs. Yeah, I know that's an oxymoron when you talk about Kamala Harris. But is she really, is this just kind of biding time to come back in 2028? I mean, the woman spent over $2 billion when you add everything to it, right? All the PACs and everything in 107 days and couldn't do it. And people say, oh, she only had 107 days, a little more than 3 months to run. No, the woman was vice president of the United States for 4 years. You should be campaigning if you're the vice president and you have any ambition of ever being president. Why would you not use that office and that time in that office to campaign? You only really matter in 2 times. One is to break a tie in the Senate, and the other is if something happens to the president. Other than that, you're pretty much free to do whatever you want. She could have run with the border issue. She could have run with crime in the streets. She could have run with so many things, and a lot of them were given to her as a project or a job by the Biden administration, and she was ineffective. So we saw her ability, or inability, I should say, and that's why we rejected her. So she didn't just, and that's the name of the book, by the way, 107 Days, I believe. That's the name of it. In her statement, the admission that her 2024 campaign strategy fell short, isn't that the understatement? She lost all 7 swing states to Trump, 312 to 226 in the Electoral College. In declining the governor race, she's keeping that possibility of a presidential bid alive for 2028, right? Just do your thing, lady. All right, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation, 508-871-7000. I always got to bring, because before we run out of time today, as I have to always point out and bring it out when we have voter fraud. Because over the years, I'm so sick of, especially on the left, telling me there is no voter fraud. Well, here's an example. Well, there's no voter fraud that's going to, matter. Well, that's asinine. Either you accept voter fraud or you don't accept it. It's not a matter of degrees. But this Bridgeport scandal that we've talked about from time to time, 4 additional Bridgeport residents, Robert Anderson, Maria Hernandez, Elise Mercado, and Sylvia Ramos, were all charged yesterday for misuse of absentee ballots in the 2023 Democratic mayoral primary, bringing the total to 9 individuals charged. And do you remember this story from a couple of years ago? Because they actually had the mayor's minions, I guess, in the middle of the night, walking up to the ballot boxes, which I absolutely hate the idea of ballot boxes, unmanned open ballot boxes. That is just beyond stupidity. But there she is on the video, just walking up, dumping bags of ballots at like 1, 2 in the morning. And this scandal, by the way, if you forgot, led a judge to ordering a rerun of the 23 primary after those surveillance videos showed those individuals, including Wanda Getter-Pataski, stuffing ballot drop boxes, totally undermining the integrity of that election. Now, Anderson faces 3 counts of possession of restricted ballots, 2 counts of misrepresenting absentee voting eligibility, 2 counts of failing to sign in as an assister, and similar charges were filed against Hernandez, Mercado, and Ramos. The law in the books, you're not supposed to be in possession of more than 1 ballot, and the ballot you're allowed to be in possession of has to be yours, unless you are assisting elderly or family who can't get to it. But put a pin in that. You're not supposed to walk around with a bag of absentee ballots. And she wasn't even listed as an assister, meaning that she was cleared or authorized, or it was acknowledged that she was working on the election. Now, there are previous arrests there, right? Those 5 others. And this included a city council member, Alfredo Castillo, Maria Pereri, Jasmine Melendez, along with that city employee, or former now, Wanda Getter-Pataki. Margaret Joyce. They were all charged back in February. Similar offenses. So voter fraud, folks, is absolutely there. It's absolutely real. And this is in Connecticut. It is illegal in Connecticut to handle someone else's absentee ballot unless you're a family member, a caregiver, or an authorized designee. And, yeah, good point. Ted says nothing good happens after midnight. Yeah, it depends on your perspective, I guess. So all these charges, right? Misrepresenting eligibility, failing to sign as an assister, violating state election laws. Defendants allegedly pressured voters to choose specific candidates. They mishandled those ballots, compromising voter integrity. When you add this up with all the other stuff that happens, dead people voting, people who don't live in the district, they should have been purged. And don't you love it when you say you're going to purge the voter rolls? The left actually calls you racist and Nazi, and you're trying to suppress the vote. Do you know what purging the voter rolls means? Because either you don't, or you don't have the intellectual capability to have this conversation. It means that the clerk should go before every election, should go through the voter roll, and if you are dead, you should be removed from the voter roll. If you no longer live in that town, city, you should be removed. Because if you move somewhere else, you're eligible to register to vote there. So that's purging. That's what purging a voter roll means, folks. It's taking people who are ineligible to vote off. Why would they be on there? Why would you want people to be on there? And we don't have time for me to get into this. I don't believe in the automatic registering of people to vote either, because if you don't take the time to register yourself, you've just loaded the chamber with a live round for somebody else to use that. But we're against the clock, and we have to wrap up the Thursday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCR and Frankie Boria. Right up after me tomorrow, the Carl brothers are in at 1 o'clock. I am not in on Fridays, but they always come in for a great show, folks. So, hey, this will wrap up the Thursday edition. Follow me on my social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show. And don't forget that this is a podcast. All right, go out, folks.